Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. This is, well, if you're in YouTube, you'll see a little link down below that you can jump into and actually join the conversation. We'd love to have you here. If you're here as an attendee and you're looking at all of these panelists and wondering how you could become a panelist, you might be watching us and thinking, I know more than these guys, these jokers. Well, then you might. So, and we'd love to have you come on. You just have to join a little earlier than 7 o'clock. We open the doors at 6. At 6 o'clock from 6 to 6:30, we don't promise anything. We're just doing the best we can. We're having some coffee, some tea, and kind of getting up to speed. Between 6:30 and 6:40, we release the Discord link. That's where over 700 of us keep talking between all of these events. And at 6:40, we do the mic checks. So 6:40 is where we do those mic checks. You need to be here by 6:40 to be in the panel. So we'll go through those mic checks. Also, if you are an attendee and you're not doing the mic checks, it's a good time to ask questions, vote on questions, and kind of really prepare the whole show. You really are the producers. So if you're here as an attendee, you're the one running the show. So the question, this is not a show that we designed a whole bunch of things to do. We wait for you to ask questions, and so it's really your job to ask questions, vote on questions, and kind of prioritize what we're going to talk about next. As panelists, we'll do the best we can to answer them. I can't promise that we will, but we'll at least discuss them as best we can and get through that first hour. So the first hour from 7 to 8 is our discussion of just general questions that are related to production and media production. From 8 to 9, we usually have a vertical, something that we're talking about for just that whole hour. Today, we're going to be talking about, Chris Summers is going to lead a discussion about logistics, how to really, how we're loading in, loading out, how we're managing cameras, how we're keeping our cameras safe and all of our gear safe to some degree. So Chris is going to be talking about that. Wednesdays are generally cameras and video. Thursdays are usually a special artist that comes in. Daria Musk will be here tomorrow. So she's been doing lots of audience engagement and incredible concerts online for a decade. So she's going to come and join us and talk about how she approaches that. On Mondays, we have general discussions. Tuesday is audio. Friday and Saturday are both dedicated to education. So we'll be talking for educators. If you have questions about how do we deal with all the COVID classrooms, that's what we're kind of focused on Friday. So Friday from 8 to 9, Saturday from 9 to 11. We'll be talking about media production, specifically as it pertains to education, from K through 12 all the way through professional education and everything in between. So if you've got questions or you want to be part of the panel, we'd love to have you. So anyway, that's kind of the overview of how that works. If you want to share this, don't share your own link. You probably have a link that you got into this event with, but this is the actual link. I put it in the chat here. The actual link you want to use to send to other people. Everybody's welcome to join the conversation. All right, Chris, do we have any questions?
Good morning, Alex. Yes, we do. Yeah, that sharing of your own link thing really got me bad a long while ago.
There was a whole bunch of Chris's showing up.
Chris Fenwicks. It was
They're like, it's Chris. Why is there so many Chris Fenwicks? So
it's
anyway.
really amazing how much stuff we've learned about just the tiny idiosyncrasies about Zoom by doing, actually, I think we're close to like 1,000 hours now, or maybe even more of office hours. Anyway, so Philip Tesoro from Brisbane, Australia says, gotta hit the button. He says, so we've seen your audio chains for this type of thing. What do you use when on a client Zoom call? The same or something simplified?
I use this. This is exactly what I use. So I'm usually in this chair, for better or for worse, a solid 6 to 8 hours a day in meetings with clients. Now you'll see the other kit that I have, which is a little bit smaller, but I don't think any less expensive. In my office, I'm slowly opened a new office that I'm building up, and so I'll have another camera rig there that I'm using for meetings, but it'll still have the same gray background. It might be a little brighter than this one, and I'll be using a slightly different camera system, but otherwise it's pretty much the same. I find that, I will say for myself, I think that we've actually gotten work because of how, when you're talking about doing virtual events, looking really good for a virtual event or well lit and sounding good definitely is a good point of sales. You have to remember that every time you're talking to folks, they're making decisions about whether they trust you to take something on. And the better all of those technical things come together, the more confidence they have. And a lot of production is just based on confidence. Bill, and then Paul, and then Chris.
With my clients, what I'm finding is that I have a different look depending on the client. I use this for office hours, but I so far haven't done a Zoom with clients where I've had this background. I have my office behind me is now lit, so I can flip some switches and do my office. That's another one. And then my wife also has some things that she needs to do, so we have a background set up for her. So I'm starting to kind of put together scenes for different clients that I think are appropriate for what they need. Some more business-like, some more whimsical, depending on who needs it. And then the other thing is that I have so much frustration when I can't use Zoom now that we've spent so much time dialing this in, because if I have to go off on Teams or on WebEx or something, not having my normal tools feels like a real drag on what I can present to my clients, which is frustrating.
Yeah. Paul?
Not use this setup. I would use my mixer with the SM57 or 58, and I would use my blogger camera. And clients, could somebody send me some clients so I could test it?
Very good. Go ahead, Chris.
I was
Chris.
wondering, Alex, do you, I know that 09, just because I've been, creeping on the 090 Media website, there's, and I just looked it up, is it Billy and Mark, the other two, like main guys? So have you worked with them? Do they have a similar or very quality setup for doing virtual meetings?
Theirs doesn't look quite like mine.
But have you like really pushed them to up their game?
I push it. I bring it to the table. So
Are you
everybody has their
winning?
own opinion. Everyone has their own opinion about how much you need to invest and what you have. And I have a very dedicated space for it in my house. So it's as people have seen. So it's easier for me than everyone to make that work. But I highly encourage it, and we're slowly across the whole company now. The problem right now is that the company's growing so fast that we're trying to figure out where we put people and things and backgrounds, but we're slowly kind of organizing all of that. And there are reasons to show your background as well. So for instance, Brian, who is not on our shows right now because he's on shows for me, Brian Maddox, who was here a lot in the early days, is now fully subscribed. So, but when he jumps on, you see his mixers, you see two CO5s behind him, or one on one end and one on another. And that's useful too. It doesn't have to be gray, showing what he has there. And, Kevin Maurer has the new 2ME advanced panel in front of him when he's talking to clients. And that's all part of a good show. Go ahead, Jeff, and then Guy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to jump in. It's actually, I've done my fair share of giving a certain person, Mr. Mark over there, a little hard time about how his background was looking when we were having a couple of meetings and stuff.
Yeah,
I was riveting him a little bit about that.
Please continue.
I told him there's this show that he should watch in the morning, and he goes, "Yeah, twins, man, give me a break."
Jeff.
So I have the Countryman E6, and that travels with me from my home office to my work office where I have a setup. And then I always carry with me a decent set of earbuds with an inline mic that in an emergency, I can plug that into my Mac laptop or my iPhone. And at least I have some isolated headphones and a decent mic to have with me.
No, absolutely. Guy, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I'll admit I've been using a cheap Plantronics hand-me-down that I'll use every once in a while at the office. But at home, if I'm jumping into some meetings, I learned to dumb it down, actually, because if you look too good, you start getting volunteered for stuff. And it's like, hey, you're the guy. You look good. You should do this for us. You're the man. Remember, sometimes you want to bring it down, turn off some lights. And
there you go. That's good. All right, next question.
That's it. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I thought I was muted. Roger from Cuomo, Italy says, what is Jeff Keithley's take on Paul's video signal becoming green earlier in the pre-show, right when he started speaking, when he was using NDI? This is exactly like what happened with Stewart's signal a few weeks ago. Let's have Jeff answer this.
Which Paul?
It was Paul Wallace from Austin.
I'll be honest with you. I was eating breakfast. I wasn't paying attention. So
it's just turning. It looks like it's switching from RGB to YUV. So it's just turning purple and and green, but it's only when they speak, and both of them happen to be on NDI.
I'd have to know more about the signal flow to be able to really give a diagnosis on that. There's so many variables. Just because you're using NDI doesn't mean it's necessarily a problem in NDI. It could very well be their cameras. There's just so many variables.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I agree. And as I said earlier on, it's like you could be driving to next door, but taking the very, very long way, because since NDI doesn't really map direct routes from one place to the other, the best thing for NDI is just to make your IPs static. And then that way it's going from one direction to the other without looking for a roadmap. But it could also be a camera show too.
Paul,
so.
can you reproduce the problem?
I'm trying as hard as I can to reproduce it. It won't do it now.
Okay, now
will
it won't
not do
All
it.
right. All right. Okay, there we go. Stuart, go ahead, Stuart, and then we'll move on.
Setting your IP addresses might not work too well with the NDI because it doesn't use like IPv version 6 or anything. I'm trying to think of the name of the handshaking protocol it uses. And
MDNS.
Bonjour, that's it. The other thing is with how mine was going green the other week, I think that might have actually been in Zoom, not in NDI, because since then we've had both an update for Zoom, and I've upgraded my entire system to be on the same drivers which were the same ones that were causing the issue. So
and also make sure NDI tools is updated.
It hasn't done it again. Yep, I did all of that through multiple computers, and yeah, they're all the same. But I still think that the problem was the way Zoom was dealing with the NDI coming in, because it only happened after I was selected as the panelist that's being speaking.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, so it's...
Jeffrey, can you?
Yeah, that's another good point. NDI is constantly upgrading their NDI tools. However, the software also has to update it in the background. Like for instance, current version of Wirecast is only supports NDI 4.1. The beta that's going to be, or what they're calling 14 that's coming out, is going to support 4.5. So it can be the software that's trying to pull the NDI into the system.
And I love baseband. All right, next question.
I was just going to say that I did just check. There is a new update to Zoom, and it's 5.2.1, and it allows a host to unmute somebody's mic with pre-approved
they have to pre-approve
status.
Yep.
I did not know that. I need to start paying more attention. Victoria Ray from Portland, Oregon says, I'm curious about unexpected wind gusts when shooting outside. Is the precaution to always use lapel mics, or just have talent speak louder and try to fix it in post?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, you can buy. There are a lot of different accessories for microphones to protect it from wind. A well-known company is Rycote. They have solutions for handheld mics, lavaliers. They have this thing called the Lav Windjammer, which is this ball, and you'll see them being used a lot in Japanese news programming. This huge ball there. Wait, let me spotlight Jeffrey Powers.
It's called a dead cat.
Well, that one's more like a dead rat.
Situations, yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of solutions out there. Another company to look at is Bubblebee Industries, the same company that makes the Sidekick earpiece. They also sell a lot of wind protection products.
Next, Bill.
I was just going to say really quickly, while you're doing sound, make sure if you have any kind of bounce cards or things like that, those become sales really quickly. Those are any kind of reflector you're using. That's the first place I go, and then sound second.
And who was, go ahead, Stuart.
I like simple solutions. Put your back to the wind. Use your body as a windbreak and hide the microphone from the wind, or stand behind a wall that blocks it. Also, Jeff, that doesn't look like a dead cat. That looks like a tribble.
Yeah. The one thing to think about is it's really hard. Labs tend to be super sensitive to high wind, and then you're putting something on someone that is obviously very visible. If you can, having a dead cat on a shotgun is going to do better than a lav, attached to someone, or and so that's something to kind of consider, is using a shotgun for those kinds of interviews. But it is why we avoid outdoor whenever possible, unless it's absolutely necessary. And there are times that it's necessary to do it. We will go, if we're just doing B-roll and we're picking up a couple little interviews and we're doing handheld or whatever, we'll do it. There are so many variables that get unwound when we go outside that we do it there is a long discussion about why it's necessary to be outside in our company before we'll go outside. And before we'll have windows. I don't, you just kind of want to control that and I admit I come from a studio background, but you want to control as much as you can on those, because depending on the kind of person you're talking to, if you're dealing with a C-level person that you're interviewing or a VIP, you only get them for a short period of time. And if you spend it dealing with extra variables, it's unfortunate. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm just rereading Victoria's question. She says, like, should I have like the talent speak louder and just try to fix it in post? No, try to fix it in post is not an option. That's something you don't say on set. Never.
As someone who gets paid to fix it in post, he's like, don't do that.
No, you don't do that. No, you get the appropriate, mic protection for your situation. That's why you do location scouts. That's why you look at the weather beforehand. You prep for these things.
Yep. Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Two quick things. One, I think I mentioned this the other day. I literally had a producer sitting behind me one day, and I said, well, I need to deal with this right now. And she said, well, can't we just fix it in post? And I had to turn around and look at her and go, this is post. This is where it gets fixed. And then the other thing I was going to mention about the outdoors, and you mentioned lighting. We had a client who insisted that we used natural lighting in this room because they had this big, beautiful window that was actually behind the cameras. The camera couldn't even see out the window, but they wanted to use the natural lighting. And through the whole piece, there were these glares going across the talent face, which was reflections off of cars out on the street.
Yeah,
because they insisted.
We had a client that wanted to have an outdoor windows, but we said, are we ever going to see the windows? No, but we want the lighting to it. And instead, we just built this big rig with a whole bunch of Image 80s and a diffuser, and it looked exactly like they were outside, except they weren't. And it looked great. Yeah. And it was stable, and it did exactly what we needed to do, and it was inside. Anyway, next question.
Roger, once again from Como, Italy, says, can a bad HDMI cable be the cause of sync issues in Zoom? Out of sync, Zach yesterday, Barry Monday, Victor a few weeks ago. At the beginning of office hour, their sync was okay. After a while, huge sync issues, all using ATEM minis.
I'm afraid that I will throw the ATEM mini over the cliff before I throw the cable over the cliff. I think that a lot of times, I still think that the audio processing within all Blackmagic hardware is a work in progress. And so I just, we don't do it very often. And so when we see those sync issues, I feel like there's an update somewhere that's going to solve that. I'm highly, the chances of it being the cable as opposed to the mini are very low. So Bill and then Victor.
I agree that it has sync issues, but I think what he's talking about, that variable sync issue where you start out in sync.
I understand, but the chances of you getting a solid signal out of an HDMI and then having it drop out of sync because of the cable is almost zero. That you would get if you get a broken up signal, or your things are scratching or breaking apart, then that could be an HDMI issue. But the chances of getting a solid signal and then it changing inside of a HDMI cable is almost zero.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just saying that when you see that drift, it tends to be a Zoom or something in the net problem, not your local hardware, in my experience.
I don't know, but the problem is that Victor then switched to something else, and then it went right back into sync. So go ahead, Victor.
For me, yesterday, the problem definitely was not the ATEM. I was dropping frames and packets like a rabbit drops peanuts or something at the end. So it was definitely my network that caused that yesterday. And by the way, I'm not using the ATEM for audio at all at this point.
But we had it previously, and when we had those huge sync issues, it was all going through the audio was going through the ATEM, and then we bypassed the ATEM for audio, and then the audio was fine. I don't think
100%.
Yeah, I don't think
and that's why I gave up.
there could be a lot of things with the HDMI cables that could be a problem, but being in sync and then going out of sync would be highly unlikely. Next question.
Jeff Francis, our own Jeff Francis. Good morning, Jeff. I want to control my Yamaha digital mixers CL5, CL3, TF5 remotely. University IT supplies a VPN. Can you walk me through the process of setting this up? How do I keep other parties, local or remote, out?
Go ahead, Jeff. Keith.
That's what the VPN should be able to be part of that security to keep people out of it. It's going to be more than what we could just drop on you right now to do it, Jeff. So if you want to get together later today, I could walk you through it. There's a couple different ways, whether it's just a PC to access it, or actually there are iPad apps that are really good to do it too.
And Jeff, you're already familiar with the Yamaha control software for the CLs? I don't know.
Oh, very much.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically all you're doing inside of the VPN is making sure that you have access to the subnet that is controlling that mixer. Once you have access to that subnet, you should just be able to add that IP into the app, and it will, if you have the right IP and the right route, router and everything else, it should just show up, as if it was in the same room. But it's not more complicated than that. On the VPN side, they have to make sure that you're able to see that subnet, to get to that. So there's some IT stuff of making sure that from a security perspective, and then from a security perspective, they got to make sure other people can't see it, or don't have access to that. And so that's the on the IT settings. It's not something that you do by yourself. It's something that you do within opening and closing access, to that location. Does that make sense, Jeff?
Yeah, I'll talk to Jeff offline because those are things I'll need to answer for the IT. I'll need to direct our IT department about what they need to do as far as letting that VPN work.
Talk to Jeff, and then also Aaron Mailer built our entire infrastructure, who's in Discord for up to 10 or 15 systems, all with Yamaha mixers and everything else, ATEMs and everything else all time. But Jeff Keithley, I'm sure, can help you with that. But also, if there's any other questions you have that are specifically for IT, Aaron comes from an IT back, just comes from the administrator background for a school specifically. So he may be able to speak school really, really well as far as what they're going to be concerned about and into their listening for that. Chris?
So I have a question. Think about this: overkill, advisable, or irrelevant. Those are the choices. Would it be a good idea for me to set up a VPN for all of our editors spread around the Western states so that we have that subnet? I barely understand networking. So we have, would that mean that I could access a computer as though it was in the next room?
Yes.
That's just the way we've worked for so long that I don't have any other way of thinking. I mean, I've been doing it for 10 years that everything is, and you have to decide about security. Like, we put software on all the computers that you can, we have high secure events that we can't do that. But for most of our stuff, we have it set up so that I can log into anybody's laptop and open it up. We had someone steal one of our laptops and we used to go check in on them. Hey, so I wonder what they're doing. Oh, they're playing games again.
But by doing that, if I were to set up a VPN for all of the Slice editors, would it be like I was just in the next room?
Yep. Other than just the speed of your network, it would be, otherwise all the access would be the same. Just be limited to the speed of your network.
I learn stuff every day.
Amazing. Let's jump to the next question.
Yeah, let's do that. Sorry. Thank you for answering my ad hoc question. Jeffrey Power says, best hardware solution to compress audio from a Zoom type room when a participant is at -12 LUFS or harsher into an IEM. So you just want to compress it so it sounds better to you. You're not necessarily worried about recording a great signal.
No, this is right now I'm using a wireless in-ear, but a lot of times I'm using a wired in-ear. And when that happens, you get some of these Zoom rooms where the people just don't care. And you say, can you adjust the sound? I'm not going to do that. So in order for them, that they end up blasting in my ear. The only thing I could think of is getting a guitar pedal, which is can be a stereo compressor that could go into the ear. So if they do have a really harsh audio, it doesn't kill my ear just to listen to them talk.
I think after so many events, I don't know if my brain, I think, just filters it. I mean, I'll change it, but it doesn't really affect. I mean, things are going really loud or really quiet. Maybe I don't hear that well, but I seem to be able to pick up things. But I'm not that sensitive to it anymore. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, Jeffrey, do you have like voice meter or one of those like digital routing apps on your machine?
Yeah, I do. I was trying to look for something more of a hardware
So-
solution.
Okay, more of a
software.
hardware solution.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And like I
digital
said, the only thing I can
board.
think of is a guitar pedal, which would do the compression and then bring it
I think
into my
the
ear.
guitar pedal is a lot of work. I mean, I think that there's probably little smaller boxes that
Yeah, I
will
think
do compression for you.
It might sound even harsher. Like
Yeah, I mean,
if you're constantly slamming on a compressor and like making the signal even like thicker, it might just be even more painful.
I mean, you
to
could
hear.
do something like a DPX 166 and just push it in. It's not that expensive. And I mean, I don't know if you're trying to go. I want hardware. I mean, I would do software myself. But if you said I want to do hardware, because I would just use Audio Hijack to do it as far as that goes. But the and just put it into a limiter or a compressor to make that go away. But if you're going to use hardware, something like a little DPX 166 and put it, give it some kind of hard stop, you probably end up with things not getting louder at least. And you
Yeah, I
can
was
probably bring
hoping
things
not
up
to
too.
go. I was hoping not to go rack mounted either. So
Okay, well, you're making so many rules here. It's hard to fit into the little box. All right, Jesse.
Alesis NanoComp.
Okay. Alesis NanoComp, and it's like a little box. Is it a?
Yeah, it's like a little, I don't even know, 1/4 rack space, little
Okay.
tiny dude that was built in
Yeah,
the
what
90s.
he said.
Yeah.
Good catch, Jesse. That's a good one. Go ahead, Chris.
Jeffrey, could you just be honest with us for a moment? Are you just looking for an excuse to buy a guitar pedal?
Oh, I got so many guitar pedals, it's crazy. So,
He's looking
no,
for an excuse just to use the
so-
one he already has. All
no,
right.
no. This would also be perfect for any type of road gear or anything like that. So, like I said, if we have to
Yeah.
do something on the fly, I'm not
Well,
killing
try
my ears.
Try the Nano. Try the Nano.
You're
Yeah,
allowed to buy
let
a
us
pedal
know.
if you want.
All right, next question.
Paul Shadwell says, can I please get a lesson on how to best set up and use a Mix Pre 3.2 with an ATEM Mini Pro and Zoom? Is this related to your problems with sound check this morning, Paul?
Yes.
Well, I think the big trick that we ran into was when you take the output, the little headphone jack output from the Mix Pre 3 and put it into the ATEM Mini, that you need to, I believe, turn it up 13 dB on the output. Phil?
Yeah. My question is, why do you go through the ATEM Mini?
For sync is the popular thought.
I don't think you need that. Just go straight into the computer.
Good, Guy.
Yeah, I would say go straight into the computer unless you need to do audio follows video when you're cutting to another source. So sometimes I'll use my iPad as a source to push videos in, and then I'll run audio through the Blackmagic ATEM and change the setting in Zoom. But basically, I was recommending it in the chat, which is to turn tone on and then push -20 dB tone. So it's in the, let me see if I can get to it real quick. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's on the second page of the menu. And don't do this while we're in here. Don't press tone and blast us. But yeah, basically you'll line it up to where the 20 is then 20 over here on your, I have mine in mic 2, and then you can see mine. I actually have it on left and right, which seems to help. I can't do this with the other, actually I probably could. So in your settings, I'm trying to trackball with the left hand while holding this, and my left hand just came out of
With the bum left
cast.
hand.
No, I got it out of the cast.
Oh,
yesterday.
congratulations.
Thanks. Oh yeah, split audio. So that's the other one you want to do, is split it, and that'll take the left and the right, because that input is a sorry for the mess of cables here, but that input is a stereo input. So you'll kick it out left and right. So I have my output. Yeah, this is going to be too hard to do live on a little tiny screen like that.
With a broken hand.
Yeah. So anyways, hope that helps. I can try and type it up in the Discord a little bit better than what we got here.
And this is all set up in the hallway in your house, correct?
Yeah, well, the dollhouse is gone. Can't show you the dollhouse, but yeah, I'm at the top of the stairs.
That's great. Oh man. Yeah. Yeah, there are reasons. Like one of the things that I do if I'm running events through a switcher is I'll run the audio into the camera. And why I do that is when I cut away from myself, I want to be absolutely sure that I can't make any noise. So I'm, the main reason that I'm, if I want to show you something in that case, I want auto follows videos so that if I cut away and I'm managing the event for the client, that it cuts it off. And so there are reasons to pass it into the switcher. But for this stuff, I'm not doing that right now. And by the way, you can add more questions because we're running a little light for 28 minutes, but we've got enough to kind of chew on slowly, but we will chew on them faster if you ask more questions, just let you know. Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Michael Luke from Toronto says, is there a more cost-effective way of extending HDMI signals over great distances besides using HDMI to HD SDI converters?
Stuart?
I just posted a link in the chat to a cheaper version of a extender. It's actually a IP-based extender. That's from my local electronics store. So you'd be able to find something similar. Just rip off the details you need, and
I got to tell you,
find that sort of device.
I got to tell you, Jaycar is the coolest store. When I was in Melbourne, I need to pick up some C13s that were within the right ones for Australia. And so I just did a real quick search, and a couple blocks away, I saw a Jaycar, and I walked in, and it's what every Radio Shack should have become, right? It's just the right amount of the things you need plus geeky things. They've got little 3D printers, and they've got little kits for kids to learn how to do electronics, but they've also got the plugs you need and the thing, all the things that you need, and people who actually know what they're talking about in the store that can talk through that, you can talk through what you're looking for, and they can help you find it and everything else. And it's just amazing how badly Radio Shack screwed that up, and how well Jaycar does it. And I thought, wow, I wonder how many of these are. There's like 2,000 of them or something, or hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Jaycars. It's not like this is like 4 stores in Australia. When I looked at their list, I was like, it's just this massive. And I was like, this is why we get Blackmagic and Decimators and everything else out of Australia, because they have all these people with geeky stores that they get that learn how to do this when they're young. So anyway, I just have to give props to that.
Stuart is beaming with pride as you praise his Jaycar.
That store is actually where the microphone that I'm using comes from. So like there's another one. I've got so much stuff from those. I've got like kits of Velleman DMX faders that I built myself, that they came from those sorts of things. It's like,
I do think that I'm amazed that they didn't. I actually talked to them at the store. I got so excited about it. I talked to the store, and then I talked to management there about it while I was in Melbourne, like typing away to them and going, you should do live streams and get people to come in and buy the kits and then follow along, for the live streams. They couldn't quite get their head around that, but I feel like, that's what Radio Shack could have done. That's what Jaycar should do. You should go pitch them on that, Stuart, because they should buy a bunch of stuff from Jaycar, and then you follow along and build your own little radio or build your whatever with a live stream with an expert, and sell a lot of product. That's all I'm saying. Vipul and then Victor.
So as long as they hire me for it, I'm happy with that.
Well, that's why you should pitch them.
I'm really happy.
That's why you should pitch them. We'll ping me. We'll make a plan. All right, Vipul and then Victor and then Ken.
2 things. I used to frequent Jaycar when I was in Auckland a few years back for an installation. So that also is one of my favorite store when I'm nearby to that. About the HDMI extending to a longer distance, Amazon Basics makes very good HDMI cables for 100 feet. It is just $70. I'll post the link in the Mukana. So perhaps no converters needed, nothing needed. It's just $100 for $70 for 100 feet. So maybe.
And by the way, I believe that the Cat 5, Cat 6 over IP. I don't think that they're truly over IP. I think that they are. If I'm correct, you have to connect them point to point. You can't put them into your router. They're not.
But again, no, they are HDMI over fiber. So no Cat 6, nothing.
No, I'm talking about the ones we were talking about earlier. But yeah, you're right. You just be careful of that assumption. We run a lot of Cat to move HDMI.
More equipment. Yeah, more equipment in a chain, meaning more points of failure. So this is just a cable plugs into an HDMI out, goes straight away into HDMI in. So.
but we've definitely run hundreds of feet with the I think Geffen makes HDMI extenders as well, and we've run hundreds of feet with those effectively over Cat 6. Victor, and then Ken.
Company called eArc makes HDMI fiber optic cables up to 100 feet. They start from 6 feet to 100 feet. I think the 100 foot is about $126. And I know that they work very well because I've worked at a church that used them. I will try to put a link on Makana, but I'm afraid to put links in because I'm going to break them or I'm going to do something wrong. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Ken.
Long ago and far away, we used to be able to order things in our Radio Shack stores. This is close to my heart because I ran Radio Shacks for 15 years. You don't know the frustration of a store manager who all they could do was sell an iPhone or a single LED for $3.99. I quit the company and they went bankrupt. I don't know if there was anything to do with.
I think it was directly connected. I think when you quit, they just gave up hope. They were like, if we're going to lose Ken, it's over. Go ahead, Colin.
HDMI over Ethernet is not it. It's HDMI over Ethernet cable, as you say. It's point to point. But more importantly, the unpowered HDMI over Cat 5, Cat 6 are dual cable. That is one send, one receive. And you should not go, even though they advertise 100 feet unpowered. Don't do it. Don't go over 75 unpowered. You want powered. Powered adapters are available, and most of the adapters will optionally allow you to add a wall wart to power it and give you like up to 1,000 feet or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever done more than about 300 feet, but they've all been powered. To your point,
yeah,
absolutely. Vipul.
My personal experience with those extenders, they are a little messy for the high pass. So when you have a sharp color jump from one to another, they tend to soft little bit. So be careful about using those extenders in a quality work.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Okay, Paul Shadwell once again says, does anyone know of a clamp that would work with an NVMe drive in an IC box to mount on a small rig cage? I think he's trying to replace the Samsung T5 that you recommended the other day.
Stuart?
Another link in the chat. From the Small Rig website, Paul.
Yeah. There we go. That looks good. And there's,
although looking at the IC or the IC box, that looks like a really nice adapter that I think I'm going to have to get one myself too.
Yeah, no, that looks good.
Paul, you might have to tune up your Google, get it working better.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, that's what this is for. This is the human Google, human Google. All right, next question.
Good morning, Sky. Sky says, an Apple tech said Chrome will kill your laptop. Overdrive the fan and processor. True or propaganda?
Go ahead, Colin.
There was a point many years ago where Chrome was trying to use graphics card APIs that were not documented. That's no longer a problem. That was a problem back in like 2012. If they're still selling you that it's a bill of goods, don't just ignore them.
It is a performance pig.
It is, but it is, but it's not going to crash your system.
It's not going to crash your computer, but just know that if you actually want things to run, I run Chrome all the time. So I'm not saying, I mean, that's my primary app, but I know that if I need to pull my elbows in a little bit, I get off of it because it is just sucks up. It just sucks up so much.
As do I. Now, just for example, I'm running 300 tabs plus Wirecast on this 2013 MacBook Pro, and it works flawlessly. So, it's all, these things are all relative.
Right. Absolutely. Bill.
So alt would be Firefox or Safari?
For a serious person, Firefox.
Yeah, I switched to Firefox. I don't use Safari that much, oddly enough. I use it for certain kinds of tests that I do, but outside of that, it's never really worked for me. Go ahead, Bill, and then Stuart.
I'm back and forth between Safari and Chrome all the time. And my only issue is that when I try to get out of Chrome, it can get very sticky. And I've run into a lot of circumstances where just trying to decouple from Chrome meant a hard reboot, cold reboot of my whole system to get it off of there. So,
yeah. Stuart?
There's a whole lot of parts of Firefox that will allow different websites to run scripts in your browser and what have you. And actually, there's ways of using it for data mining or bit mining or however it is for cryptocurrency. That's one thing I don't understand. If you're looking for a browser that is similar to Firefox, but doesn't allow that or can tighten down the security and can get past geo-blocking, you're looking for Tor, T-O-R browser. And there are both Mac and Android versions of it.
Great. Paul?
I'm actually looking for Netscape, but that's a whole different story.
All right, Paul?
I actually, these days I'm using Microsoft's Edge, the new one that's based on the Chrome engine. And that's pretty good. So I switched my Mac to use that.
How do you kill all the ads on Edge? I can't. Microsoft, everything is an ad.
No, that's the old Edge, not the new one.
There you go. You got to go to the new one.
I believe Edge is the Edge that's built on the Chrome engine may still be in beta, so you might need to go down the beta path to grab it. Does work like a champ, though.
Next question.
Thank you.
Rachel Ann says, as with editor's history for writers, is there a tool that delivers the history for audio chains? Thank you. I don't know.
I think we're talking about tracking changes. And the problem is that we're physically moving those chains around. I think that's what that question is. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I suspect, and I'm having trouble parsing it too, but I suspect that this might be like when you're using pages on the web or something like that, it is doing a history. And if you go up to that top tab, you will see the last 15 or 20 versions of the document you've worked on. So it's doing a partial save in the cloud. So she may be talking about that.
Well, but I think when you're in a text document, track changes means it just shows you everything that was changed as you're editing. And so which we use constantly to make sure that we know what got changed, especially in contractual negotiation. And like, for instance, Google, Docs will track everything for you all the time, whether you ask for it to do it or not, of all the changes that were made. I think that for us, the way we track that is that most of the time we build wiring diagrams that are what we call as built. So we plan one out, and we have a wiring diagram. And then as we build it, we update that wiring diagram, and we keep on saving versions of it. And literally every time we move something, unplug something and plug something in, part of that day, the last half hour or hour of somebody's time is to update the wiring diagram so that when something goes wrong, where everything's plugged in. It seems like a waste of time until you need to figure out why something's not working, and you need to follow that path back to make that work. And so we keep those up to date pretty often as far as those wiring diagrams. Colin, and do I do it? I don't do it personally, I have to admit. It's when we're in work that we do it. For my home kit, it's constantly moving, and I don't have time to do that.
In a generalized IT environment, they call this maintaining a run book. So it might be wiring diagrams, it might be configuration files, but it's a human process that you need to get into the habit of and maintain. For example, our run book for various things will include the configuration file, the Wirecast configuration file, or the OBS configuration file and assets for a particular show, that sort of thing.
Go ahead, Chris.
But it requires human maintenance.
Yep.
I know that as an editor, a video editor, I kind of pride myself in the ability, not the ability, but the realizing, this is a really good time to save a new version because we're making a substantive change to what's going on, and I might need to get back to this point. So I do that kind of manually.
I think of saving versions is kind of like climbing a cliff and deciding where you're going to put the pin. Exactly. This is how far I'd like to fall. I don't want to. So I always think of dropping pins, and we even call it that. Like, let's drop a pin here, which is that it's just that we want to. This is where if we're going to fall back, we want to fall back to this point. Go ahead.
Have you ever done any rock climbing?
I have.
Me too.
And rappelling, which I only rock climb so that I can rappel, Australian style. All right. Anyway, go ahead. Nikki?
What does Australian style mean?
You go face
down.
Face first.
It's the only real way to do it.
Yeah, so
That's
it's
called wrap sailing, by the way, guys. As the Australian on the panel, that's called wrap sailing. where
we
you
call it
run
in the
down
US.
side of
We
a
call it
building.
Yeah, they
Australian.
don't call French fries in France either.
But we call it Australian style. And the only thing better than Australian style is helicopter is heloing off of a bridge. But anyway, that's my childhood. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, for like traditional ENG or film sets, like we don't really need to keep track of chains because we're mostly just recording ISOs and delivering a simple production mix. But for larger shows like live events, concerts, we usually get a patch list, which usually comes like from, it's delivered within the rider from the artist, and this is supplied by the artist's engineer, mix engineer, and that's what we follow. So if it's a concert, channel 1 would be kick in, channel 2 would be kick out, and then snare top, snare bottom, and go down the line. And if there are changes, we get emails either like in each evening after load in or the morning afterwards, leading up to the actual show date.
Stuart, did you have something to add, or were you talking about repelling? No. Okay. Next question.
Patrick Nashville from Patrick from Nashville, Tennessee. How can Zoom solve the I can't find the mute button problem?
Well,
I think that's a wetware problem.
I will say that so if you watch me, you'll actually see me constantly turning my mic on and off.
I've never seen you turn your mic off.
I turn it off here to.
Yeah, I understand you know how to. I'm just saying, in practice, I don't think I've ever seen you turn it off.
Yeah, no, I turn it off. So when I'm drinking tea, sometimes I'll forget, but almost every time I'm drinking tea and when I'm clearing my throat, when I'm doing something I think is going to make noise, I turn it off. And so, but I will say that I don't use any of the keys, which is why I make fun of everybody when they're using keys and when they're trying to figure it out. If I'm about to talk, I set my mic right over top of the mute and then I click
your
it,
mouse.
And it works perfectly every single time. So when you raise your hand, if you just put your mouse over top of your mute and then unmute it as soon as I say Chris, it'll work. You'll just pop right on, and then you'll just be able to talk. That's all I'm saying.
I'm going to ScreenFlow an ECU of your tile in the speaker view, and I'm going to count the number of times that you turn your mic on and off in a show.
You absolutely.
But I'm not going to tell you what day I do it.
Do it whenever you feel the necessary. All right, next question.
Paul Wallace says, as Fenwick pointed out, that's weird. I am having sync issues with NDI on an iPhone 8 Plus. What's the best plug-in mic for an iPhone that might fix this? Paul, you don't need any more microphones. Stop it.
Rode, I think the Rode plug-in ones are pretty nice if you're looking for something attached to the actual camera. The Rode, I don't know if it's going to fix your sync issue. I think that's probably NDI. But it will, as far as a good plug-in mic that plugs onto the camera and attaches to the camera, I've been pretty happy with the Rode, and the Shure makes one as well both of which I thought worked really well.
Wouldn't the audio coming from the same source as the video solve the sync problem though? And I know, Chris, you don't want me to buy any more mics, but you can't stop me, Chris.
Yeah, it is. You can't have too many mics. I'll agree with you there. I have a lot of mics. I'm the worst person to tell you to stop buying mics because I'm like, oh, that mic sounds perfect. That would be a great one. I think that, yeah, definitely having it come through the source. I thought you were talking about it slipping, the NDI slipping, or the phone slipping on its own mic. If you're having a separate input, yeah, you're always going to be able to get a better sync if the mic and if the audio and the video are bound together at the capture device. You're always going to have less sync issues. You have less, but not necessarily none. Right,
and every time I've tried to reproduce that issue with the wild colors, it's working perfectly.
Yep. See,
I can't reproduce it.
So the key is that for every show, just try to reproduce it, and then that'll keep it in. You've now added the variable that was required is to try to actually fix it. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then we'll move on.
Keep in mind when you're using NDI, when you refresh it, it starts from scratch. So you got to let it sit for a little while before you start seeing any type of problem.
Yeah. All right, next question.
James Babbitt from San Diego says, Which new show on Disney Plus were you referring to as a science class with a twist?
They did it as a section. They sent me an email. I was tweeting out that the Disney Plus has this thing where it's a science class with a twist, and they have all these goofy little shows that they have. It wasn't a song. It wasn't a specific one. They grouped them all together and they sent it out as a promo for Disney Plus. And it was all these kids, whatever. And I was just pointing out on Twitter that they have all these goofy ones for kids, but my kids just prefer to watch Connections over and over and over again. Like they're trying to slowly rake that up. And I think that, well-produced, solid science doesn't have to be silly. That's all, and it can be fun and everything else. But I think that a lot of times adults talk down to kids when it comes to that. They're quite happy. When I was a kid, I watched Connections, and I'm not saying that Connections is the thing. I just wish people would watch that and reproduce that in a modern era with modern technology, with modern budgets. Would be great. But I'm amazed that my kids are raptured by a 40-year-old show that was, in SD, poorly compressed on, that you can download from Internet Archive. But I still think it is the state of the art, like how to build educational material. And everybody should watch it as at least as reference. First episode's kind of boring. After that, it gets better. All right, next question.
7 minutes, 7 questions. David Hutchison says, Alex said he bought a bunch of ATEM constellations last week. Have you looked at the mix minus on the constellation, and have you managed to actually get it to work? The manual is vague and it's grayed out in the settings tab.
When I get mine, when I get the constellation back, I'll take a look at it. We've got a bunch of them, but we don't use constellations for audio. So I don't know if the mix minus works. I'll play with it and see if I can figure it out inside of it just on my own. But we build our audio pipeline is completely separate from the video pipeline, and then right at the very end, it's embedded. So maybe we might use the constellation to embed that audio into program, but we don't use any internal processing inside of any of the ATEM switchers to do pretty much anything. I don't think that tech is mature in their pipeline. I love Blackmagic, but their audio management is not super useful yet, in my opinion. Go ahead. Next question, Chris.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Mickey. Mickey, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there.
Yeah, Alex, did you mention like before months ago that the constellation also does sort of like a video mix minus?
No, I wish it did.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't. It does an audio mix minus. So it does. The theory is that, what it says it does is if you identify those, it will not send the audio coming in from camera 6 back to camera 6. So if you're bringing in remotes and so on and so forth, theoretically, you can have the audio not return back that on that channel that it came in on, so that you can have two-way conversations without having to set up a bunch of extra mix minuses and so on and so forth. It's built into it if you turn it on. I haven't tested it because it's just not a pipeline that we use. But I'll try to test it in the next couple weeks. Next question.
6 questions, 5 minutes. My wife needs your help. She runs a book club for a local newspaper. When she tries to roll in a video package after she has been talking, it's a bingo, dumpster fire. Any thoughts? She's running Zoom on a MacBook Pro and rolling in a QuickTime Movie OBS? ?
Well, yeah, you can't do the QuickTime Movie. That won't work. That will be a dumpster fire. You need something like OBS that can play it out, or Mimo Live will play it out for you into the system. Any of these kind of editing packages that you can put on your Mac will have a play out system that will let you play that out. And so Wirecast, OBS, Mimo Live will all do those, and that's what you need to do it. You don't want to try to use QuickTime to do that, because now you're trying to capture something and moving something and so on and so forth. Bill, and then Colin.
I'm sorry,
Mike,
Alex.
Mike, raise your hand. So Bill, and then Colin. And then
So
Mike.
that
real
might
quick, real quickly.
Yeah, might be just the up and down problem of most providers, ISP providers to your house, which will give you a robust download, but very little bandwidth going
I
up.
think this is just trying to get QuickTime to work. Go ahead. Inside of that, go ahead, Colin.
You got 2 options. If you're looking for just the video, use the VLC source in OBS. But if you want the audio and video, you're better off doing a screen share optimized for video clip directly through Zoom.
And really, the problem with the screen share is that you'll have very low frame rates. So that's
yeah, but they have an
issue there.
optimized for video that actually gives you quite excellent frame rates now,
which just cuts the
which is better
quality back
than
down.
they were, but not
But
perfect.
just makes it video again. Anyway, Mike, go ahead.
Hey, so I'm the author of this question. It's my wife who had the dumpster
Oh, yeah.
fire last night. So I guess like she is not technical at all, and I'm currently not living with her. So like, what would be the most basic, easiest for like someone who is not computer tech savvy? Like money's not an option. Just what do you guys? You just threw out three things, and
Money
I
is
don't
not
know
an
which one
option,
to
or
go
money
with.
is not a limitation.
No, it's not an option. We're loaded. We're flexing.
Nice.
I probably, I mean, if
Hire
money was
Alex.
if money was,
Yeah.
So I can tell you the easiest way to do it would take a little bit of a hump, but the easiest one on the Mac, in my opinion, that has it all built in is actually Mimo, because you can set it up and you can have your camera and switch back and forth. And it takes a little bit of that's what I use when I'm just doing pure software on my computer is Mimo. I just find it the easiest one on the Mac to use, and I didn't at first. So I will say that Oliver spent 10 years trying to get me to use it. And now that I'm used to it, I'm like, oh, I'll just do that, and I can just click on the thing and make it go away.
And
So
going down that route, well, sorry, go ahead. Finish
okay,
your-
so again, it's not, OBS is free, and there's a lot of other things that you can use. I used Wirecast for years, and probably it'd be hard to get me to go back, just because of a lot of issues. And then
Yeah.
Go
Is there any compatibility issues if the person running it at her newspaper is like using OBS, or does it not matter?
it doesn't matter how they're connecting into Zoom to
Okay.
make that work. And then the way that I do it for shows that I'm getting paid for is I have an ATEM with a playout deck. So when I cut to it, it just automatically plays. I have the money to do the thing that needs to get done, and it works every single time. So a HyperDeck connected to an ATEM is how I do it for, if someone's hiring me, that's the only way I do playout. If I'm doing stuff that's kind of volunteer or fun or something like that, then I use Mimo for that. And then for other people that I recommend that don't have budget, I usually recommend OBS.
And if you're going
Yeah.
for software with budget rather than hardware with budget, Wirecast actually is a reasonable option. It's a more turnkey option than Mimo Mimo is. There's a bigger learning curve for Mimo. They both work. And to Alex's point, Wirecast has been somewhat less stable in the past. It's gotten a lot better though.
Somewhat less stable. All right. Next question.
TJ Worrell from Minneapolis says, Pile microphones. Comments in Discord about QC issues. If they're good out of the box, are they reliable? I'm sending out 8 kits for the centerless table read that will be presented next month.
We send out 2.
You just send out 2.
They're $15 each. They're $15 each. We just send out 2 if one doesn't work. We have them fail. So I mean, we have about 1 out of every 5 or 6 fail. So we send out 2, and statistically, we feel like that will get us over the hump of them not working. It's still cheaper than all the other options. Jeffrey, and then Colin.
Yeah, it is cheaper, but it is also any type of microphone could actually fail. That's just
It is, but they fail at a very high rate.
Oh yeah. The quality control of Pile is not there, but it's just you just have to deal with it and have an alternative or a second one in there.
It's standard operating for us is if we're going to send them out to people, we just send 2. Go ahead, Colin.
Yes, essentially that's the answer. The one thing that you want to keep in mind is the arms on these things are quite long, and you'll be inclined to bend it back in the way that Phil demonstrated in the pre-show. Be very careful when you do that. Do it gingerly, because that's the one thing that will definitely kill your Pile if you're not careful about how you're bending that stock.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because you have to bend it harder than you think, but then not as hard as you go once you realize, I can bend it, and then you bend it really hard, and then
I think it's more the angle of the bend than the strength of the bend when you're actually performing the bend that matters. But I've not had one break. Many other people have.
We're going to go slightly heavy and go really fast through these questions, probably 30 seconds. If I come to you, it's like 10 or 15 seconds.
Lawrence Littlehale says, has anyone used the Motu Microbook? Would it be useful for live sound into my PC? And here's a link.
I don't think anybody here has used it. We've been stumped. All right, next question.
Not stumped, just highlighted that we haven't tried that. Mike Burns from Spokane says, what's the best way to play with Cam or OBS if you don't have any friends that are geeks like us? Go to Discord and ask.
It's
I meant
very
to
easy
say-
to acquire geeky friends. You found the
Yeah,
right place.
You've got you if you're looking for geeky friends,
I'll
this
play
is the
with you,
capital
Mike.
of it. Yeah. You go up to Discord, say, "Hey, let's all get on a Zoom and talk about this stuff." And before you know it, there'll be a bunch of you figuring it out. But that's exactly why this is created, is so that when we're stuck in our own little location, we have lots of people we can talk to. So be on Discord, ask Discord, set up your own Zooms, come here and ask more questions. That's the best solution. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Sometimes when I have to, I can't send it out to other people. Is simply just set up another computer in your area and go in and use it like a second person. So
yeah. All right, next question.
Once again, Paul says, Alex, have you given any thought to my idea of having a rating system, e.g. 1 to 5 stars for the questions and mostly the answers to the questions on office hours? I think that would be cool, Paul says.
I think it'd be great. And it's on the list, but it's not high on the list right now. We have a lot of fires that we're putting out, but I think that before we do that, we'll probably have thumbs up for the chat. Like, when people have chat comments and so on and so forth, thumbs up is probably going to go there before we put in voting for responses. I think it's a great idea. So it's not I'm not poo-pooing it at all. I think I love the idea. Just have a couple other fires. So it will. We're definitely thinking about it. Next question.
Two more questions.
Yeah, real
Tom
quick.
says the Revo Labs HD wireless mic system works great in lecture capture where there's no tech. You just pick up the mic and put on the lanyard and you get some audio. Shure doesn't seem to do something similar, and Yamaha seem to have failed to keep the product up to date. Are there other options? Revo Labs HD wireless mic.
The other thing to check for sure is Microflex. Definitely look at the Microflex line. I don't know if they have one that hangs, but they have ones that clip right onto the front of your shirt. You hang it there, and the audio is surprisingly good. And we've used Microflexes in the past. They're using the DECT transport. Go ahead, Bill, real quick, 15 seconds.
Zoom H1 in a pocket will do that too. I mean, it's not the wireless system, but if you just want to record your lecture, that's super simple.
And we're doing some research in Revo Labs, so we'll get more of that. But I will look at the Microflex system itself is a pretty slick thing. Next question.
Last question. Tom Harder from West Palm Beach, Florida says, will a 2014 MacBook Air be powerful enough to run the software interface of STEM Mini Pro? I think he means A10 Mini Pro.
Yes, it's super light. The software interface is like super light. You could run it probably on a 2012 Air. We'll still run it. Maybe even a 2011 Tiny Air, like the little tiny one we used to run it on. So it'll be fine.
And that's it. We're done.
Okay. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to watch this later because Chris is going to be showing us cool things, and I'm not going to be here. I have to go to production, so I have to run off. But is Chris here? He's
Mr. Summers. Yep.
I am
Mr. Summers.
here.
Hidden in a box. Chris is hidden in a box. So Chris, I'm handing you off to everyone, and I have to go to work. But I want to thank everybody, and I will watch this later because Chris's are some of my favorites. So anyway, I see. There's 2 Chris Summers. I was looking down at the cube, and I was like, "What? Why is there a cube?" All right. It all makes more sense. Okay,
Not
thanks,
a
Chris.
color space.
Yeah. Okay, Chris, I'm gonna hand it off to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
All right.
Alex.
All right, thanks.
Okay, now that he's gone, has anybody ever seen him mute his mic? Show of hands. Anyone? Yeah, I doubt it. Okay, so Mr. Summers, what do you got for us today?
Thanks, everyone. So general discussion about loading in, loading out, and like difficult locations. Practical stuff. When we go out into the set and it's not exactly what we thought it was going to be on the day. Let's see if screen sharing is going to work. Zoom screen share has gone completely weird lately. Different. Has anyone else experienced that? All right. So first picture, what's wrong in this image? Anyone can just pipe up. Anyone? Bueller?
I'd be afraid of that guy walking backwards off the deck.
Right. The biggest thing for me in this is like the truck is not level. And it's one of the biggest things for me is, we're loading in and out of trucks and we want to be in a level situation to start with. We can see it's completely like down on the right-hand side. we would normally put 2 for 6s in there, something to make it level from the start. Because obviously, you know, you're putting a cart in, these wheels are like shopping trolley wheels, essentially. If someone had to accidentally for a moment, let's say, leave the cart, it could easily like slide off. So that wouldn't be ideal at all. Just showing you a bit more of what we work with. This is the Magliner system. You have Jaeger carts and all sorts of other systems around the world. I prefer these, and we'll stick everything on like 2 carts. I've got my lenses on this side over here with different accessories underneath, more filters. These are the legs, of course, and then I'll have like a backup liner on the back over there. So once we roll off a truck, we can just push anywhere we need to. And the same thing with going back into the truck. We'll keep the lenses safe, keep all the equipment safe, and keep it all on one cart. So we save a lot of time for everyone.
You have
Then
a cart
we
by
can have-
per day. Is that the idea? You know what you need for that day, and it goes out on
No.
gets packed the night before or something.
I will set this up for the whole job. I will literally make this for the entire job. However, we have to be adaptable, obviously, and this will come in just a minute. This is obviously the ideal situation. We're on flat ground. We have the ability to push a trolley because the ground is even, and we have a nice location that we can push it all the way from the truck to the stage and back again. Obviously, that doesn't happen every single time. You know, we're dealing with mountains, and we're dealing with this, for example, this is on the 4th floor of an apartment block. So we weren't pulling magliners up here. This was literally unpacking the liner, humping everything up in an elevator or through the stairs. If we wanted the liner up there or something like that, we would disassemble it, carry it up, and then use it. Basically, it's just a nice surface to work off of. But this is something in an urban district. You know, we've got elevators, we've got stairs, we've got nice things. But what about going out to a location where we have to start scaling mountains and things like that, which obviously will happen quite often for many people who want to be shooting exteriors. We still have to get the equipment there, and we've got to get it there safely, and we've got to look after the equipment once it's there. Obviously, a magliner is not going to work in this situation from the truck. So we have to unpack everything. Very often, we'll use something like backpacks. Manfrotto make a really good range. There's also f-stop gear, which I'm showing here, which are slightly larger. And the nice thing about them is you can, you know, they're modular, of course, like most of them are. You can make the compartments fit to what your equipment needs are, but they're a lot bigger. So you really can fit in a cinema camera with primes and all that. You might need a few more bags, let's say, but that's really going to help you with getting in and out of a location a lot quicker, as opposed to Pelican cases or bags that are simply hand carry or a strap over the shoulder, you know? And please, if there's any questions, just interject. This is supposed to be a conversation between all of us. Night work.
Stuart has a question here.
Go ahead.
Well, actually, I've got 2 questions. First, relating to the lift gate on the back of the truck. Don't the ones in Europe have the same fold-up brake to stop things from coming off the end? And second question, what was that location with the mountain? I want to know where that is.
That is Rocco Nublo. Rocco Nubo? It's in Gran Canaria Islands.
Beautiful.
Gran Canaria. The tale of
It's
situation,
absolutely
yeah.
gorgeous.
Yeah, it is gorgeous. It's always a thing with location managers and scouts when they go for a movie. They say, all right, that looks really pretty, but no one considers the fact of how you're going to get all the equipment there at the end of the day. But yeah, it is an absolutely gorgeous location. That location, actually, a few weeks ago, we were talking about drones here in office hours. And that was one location we had a drone team come out, and we realized that they couldn't fly because, you know, the liftoff point was above the maximum height that a drone could be in the airspace, because we were 1,700 meters up. So that was completely in the airspace. Go ahead, Stu.
For the altitude, because generally for drone flight, it's height above ground. The standard worldwide is pretty much 400 feet, which is 121 meters above ground level, not above sea level.
I guess Gran Canaria, if you look at the topology, it's quite drastic. I mean, you go from sea level to 1,700 meters in like a 20-minute car ride or half an hour car ride. So, and because it's an island, I guess their airspace is a lot more controlled, but we certainly, they weren't allowed to fly because we were so high up from the altitude.
I wonder if maybe it was just that they were too high for the drone to like even get a decent bite out of the air to fly the weight.
It was a certification issue, as I understood it, because they were just in controlled airspace at that height, quite simply. With the tail lift situation, we do have those fold-up things that you mentioned. We don't really use them that often because all tail lifts are kind of different. Some are slightly shorter. So sometimes the cart just sits over the lip, so it's not useful. But the best thing that I recommend to everyone is to have to push the cart on and then immediately put their foot. It sounds crazy, but use your foot as a brake because you're naturally in tune with, you can feel the pressure on your foot. You know where the cart is in space and it's not just going to suddenly roll off the back. Yeah.
I think one of the most frightening things I've ever had to do is, let me think, Jan's not here. With large format audio consoles, they build them with 6 wheels, really big ones. And you have to pull them out onto a lift gate and hang 2 wheels off into space, turn it sideways, and then you can bring it down. And it is terrifying. Because these things can weigh, 400 or 500 pounds.
Totally.
Anyway.
No, I've seen a lot of injuries with tail lifts. They're definitely something that need to be considered.
Yeah.
All the time. Everyone thinks, oh, it's cool. I've got this hydraulic lift that I can go up and down like a toy. But I've definitely been on a set where one morning the grips team were doing a loadout and we heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the grips truck. And the assistant early in the morning was going up, but his foot was just a little bit out from the point and he had like crushed his toes. But the crazy thing is he was the one operating the lift. And, when you go into that sort of panic situation, he didn't know what to do. He just, someone else had to come and release the lift basically and get his foot up. Yeah. And that can happen just in an instant. It comes again to that point of, just being very aware about what you're doing with loading in and loading out. And that comes to, Zoom screen share is going to kill me on this. That comes to loading in and loading out to something like nighttime. We have to make sure
Chris,
that. Go ahead, mate.
Just to point out one thing for everybody's safety. Generally, most of those sorts of tail lifts are run by a remote control, but under the box where the remote control mounts, on a lot of trucks, you will find an emergency control to be able to lower or raise the thing manually. So if somebody jams or breaks the remote control or you've got somebody stuck like that, you can always lower it down. Scissor lifts are the same. Down near the base where the batteries and the weights are, there is always an emergency release to be able to lower it. It won't raise it, but it will lower it. I've fortunately had the time to go and get the licenses to operate those locally, and they are complex and dangerous pieces of equipment, so you always want to defer to the appropriately certified person on set.
That's a great point, Stu. Yeah, I generally like to make sure that whoever's operating the lift knows how to operate it. Certifications and licenses will differ regionally around the world, obviously. For example, here, we're loading at night. You can see we've got some illumination from some set light, unit lighting just out of shot. But for example, when you're at rest, once you've done your loadout, the position of the tail lift here on the left-hand truck, I don't like that because it's at an angle. They've done it to make it easy because of the heights. But I would rather employ something like a step system, as you see over here, and keep that level. Because if you're trying to run into the truck at nighttime and it's been wet and raining and that's a slippy surface, you just have more chance of slipping and falling. So I don't understand why people would make the tail lift at an, I mean, I do understand why, but it's just simply not safe. It really, really isn't. And in situations like this, where you're dealing in a bad location that happens to be muddy, it's nighttime, one has to be a lot more considerate. It's very easy to get whipped up in timing and schedules and just sort of like rush. But that's really when accidents happen at the end of the day. So that's something to consider. This was a night location out at a lake, and it was very much a Lost in La Mancha situation where we had a storm come in and wiped out the set. A huge storm, massive wind. We had to pull everything back to the truck as soon as we could because there was lightning as well. This is an easy up after the fact, scrunched up completely. We did lose some video gear as well to the rain. And this comes to the point of like, well, we can't always predict the weather, but Mickey was saying earlier, like we have to prepare for it, and that's such a really great point that Mickey made. We have to be prepared for these things of how we're going to do it. I'll just click out of this for a second. Preparing for it is a major thing. You can go to a location, but we've got to be prepared for wind, rain, sunshine. If we know we're going to be in a location, for example, that might have snow and mud and rain, and if you're really lucky, you get a combination of all three, which is fantastic. But it really does make a huge difference to spend time in prep, figure out where you're going to be, figure out what the general weather patterns are, but don't take that as the given thing. You have to be prepared for absolutely everything that's going to be happening on a set.
Hey, Chris, can you take a couple of quick questions here?
Please.
Our own Stuart Fairweather says, how do you guide employees to make sure both the vehicles and more importantly, the people aren't being overloaded or asked to move things with too much mass by themselves? And Stuart has a bad back, so he's been dealing with this for a while.
Right. It's a great question. In terms of just the vehicles, I mean, the vehicles will be rated and we can't overload them. Very often we'll be doing jobs where we have to travel across Europe. So those trucks will be weighed at weigh bridges. So there's no cheating with that. We have to keep the equipment within the range of what's acceptable on the truck. In terms of carrying equipment personally, as a person, I mean, there's certainly techniques and ways to do it. Don't bend your back. You do it with your knees when you're lifting, things like that.
Lift with your back, not your legs, right? Is that the
other way?
Do I have that right?
Yeah, keep your back straight, basically. If we wanted to boil it down, keep your back straight when lifting. And other things like
by the way, I was joking there. If somebody didn't notice, I don't want to get sued. Well, Fenwick said.
Yeah, and coming out of tail lifts as well, like the picture I had earlier with the tail lifts in all different positions, younger trainees and stuff, they're very gung-ho. And like I was certainly like that, where you'd take, two lens boxes, let's say, plus a bag over the shoulder, and you'd run out and you'd jump out, not using the steps onto the floor. It's so dangerous. Yeah. It's so dangerous for so many reasons. First of all, you're going to feel that later in 20 years' time, The other thing is that, and I've said it here before, I've had a few friends, and I've been injured on a tail lift. I broke a finger. It ended a job for me. And I've had another friend who jumped off a tail lift. Not jumped. He wasn't carrying anything. He stepped up but didn't use the steps and literally just hit the ground, but hit just the tip of a rock, which was protruding out the ground. And it shattered his foot and heel. And
this was the Steadicam op?
That's the one. And these types of things, it's much better to just go slower and be more considered about loading equipment in and out. I figured it out. We were literally loading in like 1.8 metric tons of equipment onto like a third floor of an apartment building manually. No cranes, but physically. And you have to think about like person power at that point as well. How many people have you got in your team? All right. There's the DP, the operator. Sure, if you were on a certain movie, those people would be helping you carry up and down. But generally, once you land on a location, if it was a Clint Eastwood movie, he would actually help you carry a box. But most of the time, you land on the set. You know what it's like, Mickey. You've got the director, the DP, and the main HODs, and you're already into the scene. You're talking to the actors, you're blocking, and then you're waiting for everyone else to slowly bring all that equipment up. I mean, I'm just talking about it from a camera point of view, but this relates to absolutely everyone. You're talking about sound, you're talking about lighting, you're talking about grip department, plus you got art department. You know, it's not uncommon to have 10 to 14 trucks at a unit base at any one time. And then you have to coordinate, hey guys, there's only one elevator into this building and we've only got an hour to do the load in and we're on the 3rd floor. So there's very often a case in the morning of jockeying for position. You know, if the groups get ahead of us, it's murder because they've got like 10 times more equipment and carts, and that's just going to bugger me up for my day. So very often what I'll do is I'll just grab the camera and like an action kit, let's say, of the most important things that I need, whiz up the stairs without a cart or anything, just so that I can be there listening to the people on the set, what's going to be happening with the scene, you know, what's happening with the director, what's the DP thinking about where he wants to put the camera, and then helping.
Yeah, I was going to say in terms of all this, you know, lifting and stuff, I always, when I see the young gung-ho person overdoing it, I usually just pull them aside and say, hey, I appreciate, you know, that you can do this, but you need to be doing this when you're my age. So calm down, ask for help. Let's all work together.
Yeah.
The long game. Way to go,
Yes.
Chris. So Chris Summers, I guess historically, some of the worst nightmares were Waterworld, I guess. I don't know if you know any anecdotes about the entire set turning upside down and sinking, and or even further back, the filming in Vietnam or some jungle apocalypse now. So I don't know, anecdotally, what did we learn? What do we learn how to not do? Any historical lessons we can learn there?
Thanks, Guy. There's a lot of really, really great films and documentaries about that. Hearts of Darkness, the one about Apocalypse Now, is fantastic, truly fantastic. Filmmaking's hard. It's hard. You know, it's a difficult thing. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. I've heard that so many times.
Apple sold them the fact that they can, but that's a different conversation.
Well, no, I mean, that's a valid conversation, but that's been said here before. You know, previously the barrier to entry was the camera, but once people actually get down to it, that's not the barrier of entry of shooting creative stuff. It's everything else. You've got to find a location to shoot in. You've got to have actors to shoot with. You've got to have people to support them. You've got to feed those people. You've got to pay those people, maybe. You've got to get them around safely. You know, the camera is just, it's obviously you need the camera, but once you have it, there's a whole raft of other things to consider.
YouTube would differ because, again, they don't care about content other than there's a lot of it. It's you're creating a product, and there's the dilemma. But I'm really getting us off the rabbit trail. I apologize. I'm more interested about learning from history, as you know, and the Heart of Darkness. One quote in there was the budget for, quote, sugar. This was what, in the 80s? Well,
cocaine.
I didn't say it. Thank you, Chris Finley. But yes, there apparently was a very large budget line for sugar.
Let's get a couple more questions. Paul's had his hand up very patiently. Paul, talk to us out of sync and ask your question.
Okay, very patient. Thank you, Chris. And to Chris, what is your breakage rate on how much equipment do you break? How do you track breakage? And I have a second part, which I won't ask the second part. I'll just ask the first part. So go ahead,
Paul. Ask the second part.
I forget what it was.
All right, come back to you then. In terms of breakage, that's a really, really fantastic question, and I'm so happy you brought it up. It's my responsibility to make sure there's no breakages, ultimately. I have been on shows where I've come in for, let's say, season 2, and I wasn't on season 1, and production has sat me down and they've gone, listen, no breakages, because we've had massive bills on the previous ones. And those can be down to various factors. I do believe a lot of it is human error and carelessness, but ultimately accidents and things happen. And we're shooting in non-ideal environments with heavy atmosphere, whether it be dust or smoke or, you know, moisture, things that we can't control, like natural elements. So we do our best to look after everything. I really try to avoid breakages as much as possible. It does happen. When it does happen, we immediately have to fill in a loss and damage report. And the loss and damage report will give the time of day, the time it happened, exactly what happened. It'll be filled in with witness statements as well, because not forgetting that all of this information has to be run through production and has to go to the insurance company. So there has to be a paper trail. As soon as something happens on the set, I take pictures. I become like a insurance investigator. And I do all of that, and I make as many notes as I can to cover myself, because stuff happens. A camera can break because an animal can run into it. A camera can break because a car has malfunctioned and gone into a wall. Many things can happen. We kind of prepared for them, but yeah.
Do you have statistics? What are the stats on breakage? Is it you break 5% of your gear, or
it's
what?
low. It's low.
Very low.
It's low. Yeah.
And I do remember
low.
my second part. My second
Go ahead.
part is, how much redundancy do you have in equipment in case there is breakage? You break a camera. How much redundancy do you build in? Is everything redundant, or is just a percentage redundant?
That's also a fantastic question. With lenses, it's very difficult to have redundancy with optics because they are generally quite rare and very expensive to rent. But what we do is, and we obviously have to look after them. From the camera side, let's say we have a 2 or a 3 camera feature film shooting somewhere. We will very often have a camera body, a spare camera body in the truck or on standby in case a camera body goes down, for that redundancy. So, but it's literally, if you imagine I have an A and a B kit, those are 2 full kits with matte boxes, lenses, head, legs, all the rest. But we will keep just a camera body, just the body, no accessories in the truck on standby. And very often we'll only take it if we're out of town, because the rental house is in town. So if something goes down, they're keeping that camera on their shop floor at the rental house, but it's assigned to us. It can't go to anyone else. In the event that we do have a malfunction on the set, and they can bring it to us. If we're shooting out of town, they will give us that camera box, but it'll be sealed and signed off. And we can only break that seal and use the camera if we've had a malfunction. Because in the old days, the system was they'd give us a spare camera and the directors go, "You got a camera on the truck?" And they'd quickly sneak off and get a few shots and put it back. Because in the film days, you couldn't really count how much runtime was on the cameras. On the digital cameras, you can log, you can see exactly what time it was booted. You know, it has a log file that can be downloaded. So we do build redundancy, but because of the costs, we'll take it down to the basic level, which just means a camera body, essentially.
Let's take a question from Mickey and then Bill.
And I just wanted to add, like, in terms of losses and damages, it would vary from show to show. Like, narratives are relatively easy on the gear, but say like when we're shooting reality, we're losing like a lav a week, like a cost 11 a week. Like the microphone capsule gone. In terms of transmitters, we'll probably lose 1 a month. So it really varies from what you're shooting, depending on what you're shooting.
And Chris, I wanted to ask, is there like a dollar level where you say below this dollar, it's just an expendable and we don't have to go into full insurance tech mode, taking pictures and documenting everything? This gel got ripped. Hold on, I need a picture.
There is, and it's exactly what Mickey said. It depends on the show. It's such a great point, Mickey. Thank you. I mean, I have been on movies, and I have had friends that have been on movies, I won't mention names, that have been notorious for wrecking cameras. You know, they'll come out and they would have wrecked anything from 4 to 8 ARRI 435 film cameras and a few lenses and. But because of stunts, you know, and sometimes that's just, they know it's going to happen and it's a write-off, and that's just how it is. It's a crash camera, which is why we use a lot more digital crash cameras now, like the Blackmagics or Canon 5Ds it was in the old days and things like that. But yeah, it does depend on the show.
Did you ever use a GoPro? Really?
Lots. Too many times.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Did you modify them before? I mean, like put additional lensing and et cetera?
Yeah. Yes. They were custom GoPro kind of mounts that we could screw on ND filters over the front, or things like 77mm screw fronts.
Let's go to Bill Davis, and then we'll do some more questions.
So most of us, when we started out in the business, I think we went through this process. We just started to get any gear that we could that would actually shoot or record or whatever. And then you start adding accessories to it. But eventually you start learning, oh, wait a second, what I carry it around in, my packaging and the rest of that is becoming much more important if I want the stuff to last. I know up at your level, you're talking about custom built cases and the things that the cameras come in that are perfectly designed to hold them. What would you suggest for people who are coming up? How soon should they start investing in protective gear for the gear that they own?
The day they buy
it. Yeah.
Unless you're like Mike Burns and just have money to burn.
I mean, I have to say everything we do I will state, like, I work on definitely all levels and all budgets. I'm certainly not restricted to just the stuff that I've mentioned here. I do all of it, but in terms of protecting the equipment, I think it's the same top to bottom. What I've seen over the last few years is it's certainly been a lot more bags, like the Porter brace bags and things like that. And nowadays it seems to be moving more to Peli cases, which are available everywhere and quite common. I have to give a +1 for Peli cases, because they've got so many different sizes and so many different custom inserts that you can have now, whether you wanted the Cordex ones that you can put little clips in, or you could have the foam pullouts, or you could have just the normal material ones. I really like Peli cases quite a lot. In terms of custom cases, the only times we'll get into really heavy custom cases are from the rental houses, and those will be for lens boxes. So we'll say, okay, I've got a set of 15 primes. Do I want them in a 3-hole or a 4-hole or 5-hole? Because it depends how big the cases are and how I'm going to fit them onto the Magliner. But what we'll also do, I'm kind of losing your question a bit here, Bill, but we'll also get extra lens boxes that are empty, like a single lens box or a 2-hole or a 3-hole. So that if we had a lens that we had a camera up on a hill and we said we need to run them the 50mm, you just put it into that empty box instead of carrying the whole box with 6 lenses. You're not going to carry it raw.
You're answering it fine. I just thought we probably could do a second hour on just how pick and pluck foam works and what are the strategies for not picking too much out so that it falls apart and getting that just right.
It's the worst invention ever. It's just awful. I can't stand that stuff.
There are a few companies now. There's one called Jason Cases. I'll find the link in the States that do really cool laser cutouts for Peli cases. And then they do a beautiful vinyl covering on top of the foam. It's very, very slick. You pay for it, but it's super, super slick. Ultimately, it really is about protecting the equipment ultimately, though.
Yeah. Let's do a couple more questions from the gallery here. TJ Asher says, when you are very used to doing repetitive tasks, you get complacent, and that's when mistakes and accidents happen. How do you keep yourself and your crew from becoming complacent when doing repetitive tasks?
Great question. And that really becomes the case when you're working at night or you're doing long hours and you get tired. Teamwork. We've really got to watch each other. That's a big part of it. When it comes to safety and all of that, we look out for each other. We say, hey, mate, step away from there, come away, or are you all right? Do you need to get water? Staying hydrated, making sure you get enough sleep. Common sense ultimately, but yeah, it does happen, and we just do our best to look out for each other.
Stuart?
We sort of touched on wrap sailing and abseiling before in different comments. When you're rigging yourself up with that sort of climbing gear, you go through and check your own safety, then you'll check your mate's safety. Same with parachuting, same with rigging. How do we get around with people getting upset at double checking each other? For me, I pitch it to my ACs, okay, you come and check my work, I check your work. We both have an alternate opinion that it's been done right, it's been set up safe, rather than have something fail during a take or on set or in front of the client.
I think if somebody is upset that you want to check their work, they're not a professional, and you may want to rethink working with that person. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I was, Stuart, I was going to say the same thing about, like, I really appreciated a couple of weeks ago, Chris, you mentioned something about handing off lenses. I can't remember what the nomenclature was, but do you have it? I have it. I got it. You got it. Okay, I'm off of it. You're on it, whatever. And that's very much the same when you're about to belay somebody on a climb. Belay on, belays on, climbing, climb on. You don't climb until you go through this thing. And in that case, it's about saving your life. And in the lens thing, it's about saving a, $50,000 lens. But I think you have to, if you don't have that level of respect mutually, I don't want to work with that person. Mickey, you had your hand up?
The camera department language is exactly a language of double checking and copy. There's nothing more annoying than you say something on the radio and you get nothing back.
I get that from Mickey sometimes when I chat him something and he'll just respond about copy. Like, I got it. I hear you. I acknowledge it. It's all good. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of nice. I need to do that more often.
And Mickey, double checking is an important thing. Sorry, I'm just going to carry on to answer Stuart's question, but it's very important. And that's a camera thing. It's a camera thing of like copy. You got it? You got it. Yeah, I got it. We do it all the time. It's exactly what TJ's asking. How do we make sure when we're tired and we get complacent? It's that system. It's built in of constantly checking on each other. It's just, you have to do it. It's like the military, the camera department, the film industry, all the departments I've always related to the military in a huge way. You've got a hierarchy, you've got a chain of command, you've got orders you need to follow, and you need to be correct and all the other stuff.
I will say, I think I made a mistake the other day. My wife sent me a text message and she says, I love you. And I responded back with copy. Scott, you had your hand up.
Well, I was curious. I know pilots have strategic checklists before they take off. Do you have a checklist that you could share? If then, and I'm sure there would be different checklists for different procedures. Maybe?
I don't have a standard checklist that I can share. But off the top of my head, generally when I go to a shoot the night before, I just have to think to myself, have I got a camera? Have I got lenses? Have I got batteries? Right? If I've got and media, if I've got those things, then things are all right. After that, you can filter it down into all the other things like transport, getting it there, all the rest. But I need optics, I need a camera, I need power for it and something to record onto. If I've got those basics down, all the rest is fluff, essentially. If I had to boil it down.
Caffeine, coffee.
There's something very satisfying about like packing for a road gig and laying all the stuff out, seeing it, and then going boom, 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 boom. Yep, got it. I'm good. It's very satisfying. Bill, quickly.
Yeah, I was just on checklist. There's actually a brilliant guy. His name is Atul Gawande, and he was the commencement or the valedictorian at the Harvard Medical School class his year. And he wrote a whole thing about how checklists incredibly enhance surgical suite successes. And he really drilled down to how incredibly powerful the simple checklist could be. It's worth looking up. Atul Gawande is his name.
Ernest Floyd.
I think I heard a. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think I heard a podcast on how we built this or one of those NPR ones that talked about checklists. So that's where I was inspired. Thank you. Stepping away.
Ernest Floyd says, speaking of lighting, how do you ground everything at a remote location? Little off topic there, but.
Oh, that's cool. We generally have a remote generator on like a flatbed truck, depending on the size of it. And that will be grounded with a massive iron rod just slammed into the ground.
Wow. Stuart says, best advice on dealing with the it's just a rental attitude of people who may be careless with gear.
No, renting from who? Who are you renting it from? I like to take some pride in the fact that I look after equipment. Don't forget that rental house has a person in it, and one wants to think that you're going to be building relationships with these people. Don't be gentle. It's a rental. Yeah, fine. It might go for rental cars and other things. I don't think it really applies to camera gear. It's incredibly expensive. It is quite fragile. You know, some of it's built like tanks, but that's no reason to treat it like trash if you consider the fact of the price that it costs, and also the fact that some of these items, like some lenses, are completely irreplaceable. You know, if you break a particular lens, you can't make it again. You can't buy it again. That piece of glass is gone forever. So again, it comes back to being a professional, I suppose.
Yeah. Stuart?
I have a friend here in Melbourne who rented out his Red camera and it came back with sand in the PL mount. So it's that sort of attitude towards, like, I won't rent out my gear to other people. I will say, look, hire the gear, you get a free cinematographer. I'll come and shoot it for you.
TJ Asher says, thinking of rental versus ownership, is there a certain point where it makes sense to own some of the more expensive gear like lenses? And what would be your criteria for that point where it's time to own it instead of to rent it? I would say it's almost the opposite.
That's a great question, but it's difficult to answer because it's so regional and depends on so many factors. You know, what town you're living in, what rental houses are available. I have seen people get into situations, especially if you're living in a metropolis where you have multiple rental houses. If you start buying tons of glass and accessories and equipment, you're essentially starting to compete with those rental houses. And production companies don't like that. If you're an independent filmmaker and doing your own thing, I would absolutely recommend to buy your own stuff. However, you have to calculate the servicing and upkeep costs of all of those items. People very often forget that. And I have been on shows long ago where, you know, you have a director coming in, he owns his own 3 or 4 film cameras, his own crane, his own head, everything. And you spend the first half day fixing all the equipment first before you can start working, as opposed to rolling into like an Arri or a Panavision or a Take-Two. And when you're getting out, you know, it's been cleaned, it's been serviced, and it's in its peak operational form. Mickey has his hand up.
Yeah, I was going to go to Mike Burns and then Mickey.
Okay, mic's on. So yeah, just going back earlier, the area I'm in here on the east side of Washington is a lot of lakes. So we tend to do a lot of shoots on lakes, Coeur d'Alene particularly. I'll never forget setting up pop-ups and then sandbagging it and then looking at the sand and saying, wait a second, if we just had like the cigarette cans, if we just had empty cigarette, butt cans in the truck, we could just bring them out and fill them up with sand and we're good to go. Now everything's anchored and we're fine. It was like insane to bring out sandbags to sandbag a pop-up on the beach when the sand's already there. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. It was at the time, it was like my big aha moment.
Mickey.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Chris Summers was mentioning earlier, that yeah, you are not just buying, a body, you're not just buying accessories, you have to buy into the whole infrastructure of supporting a complete set of equipment. And Chris was mentioning earlier that the rental houses would give them an extra body to keep in the truck. Like, if you want that same support, you would have to buy another body.
Right.
So yeah, like, you have to, it's at the end of the day, it's a business decision. Like, would it be cheaper for you to just rent and get that complete package that's fully maintained and you get the support if something breaks down? Or can your business handle building a full infrastructure to
I always tell people
keep
who
you running?
I always tell people who want to get into this business, I always say, be very careful. Like, you might think for X number $1,000 you can buy this camera, but you're going to spend with as inexpensive as cameras are today, you'll spend more than the cost of the camera on the support gear. You realize you need that stuff too, right? And then along the spare camera, there's a question from TJ Asher, Chris. He says, do you ever, and I was going to ask about this, do you tech that camera before you start the thing? Do you ever rotate that spare camera into the mix of A or B cameras just to know it's functional and then it's kept in storage? Or is that just kept in storage so your rental fee is less if not used?
It's kept in storage, so the rental fee is less because it's a deal that it can only be used if one of the main cameras fails.
Right.
And then obviously that rental house will want to know, well, why did that camera fail? So there will be an investigation for sure into that. And yeah, absolutely.
And then, but at the camera tech time before the beginning of the gig,
I will test that camera.
Let's say you have an A, a B, and a spare. You're going to totally tech and put the LUTs in and whatnot. It's totally ready to go, and then it's boxed up and sealed.
That's it. That's it exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I got a couple more here. Again, Mike Burns says, cigarette butt pills make a great anchors when you're using a 10. Oh, that's what we
Chris,
just said.
I already asked it.
All
Sorry.
right. Nope, no problem, no problem. And then let me do another one here. This is a great comment from Chris Clark. He said, every ship in the U.S. Navy has a set of laminated emergency bills filed in every compartment of the vessel. These checklists remind every sailor what needs to happen in that space when a fire is announced or flooding or power failure. It sounds like you folks, I think he's talking about the production community, could use a similar approach. I think it's interesting because he says it's just there. It's not that I'm going to have to read it, but it's in my face. When I open that lid, it's a reminder, I need to be careful with this thing. It's super expensive.
Yeah.
Maybe just the price. Maybe you open up the lid and says, this is a $100,000 camera. Be careful.
Or
like in the lens box, the price of each lens is like,
Yeah, we hope people are doing that.
When I took my motorcycle course here in the state of Washington, the instructor said, so when you have your first accident, that was his opening line. And so it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. Of course.
We do have a lot of safety protocols in place generally where we have like a central meeting point and we will have briefings every morning or sometimes multiple times a day, depending on what we're shooting, on a central meeting point, what to do if there's a fire. If we're in a new location, the first thing that we'll do in a safety meeting is in the morning is they'll point out where the emergency exits are, if there are multiple exits or not, keeping fire lanes clear. And on all the sets, we have lots of, what to do in the event of a fire and warnings and documents for that. We have to because of regulations and for insurance.
Chris, do you have more slides to show us?
I do.
Let's go to that for a while. Let's let Chris talk.
Why is screen sharing so bad suddenly on Zoom? I have to change the setting, I think. All right. So this is a rain deflector. It's something that you can slide it into the mat box for rainy days. It's literally the same technology that's used in the Navy or on boats, where it's a piece of glass and it literally rotates at, I don't know how many thousand revolutions per minute, and all the water just shoots off it completely. On top of that, we would cover the camera with like a poly bag to make it waterproof or water resistant, let's say. And then we'll also have something like this, which is a thunderstorm alert box, which will tell us how far away we are in terms of a lightning storm, especially if we're working around a set with lots of scaffold like you see in the background. As soon as we have a lightning storm, we take everything away and we retreat to a safe place, which will generally be the truck. And then the last thing I just wanted to talk about was shooting in dangerous places like factories. We have dangerous places which are like quite obviously dangerous, like mountains or water or things like that. But working in a factory can be highly dangerous. You've got older factories that might have like asbestos. You might have loose bits of construction or all sorts of things that you need to be very careful of. Generally, very uneven ground that you need to think about. And again, you just need to use common sense more than most things and be aware of, okay, we're not going into a normal civilian area. Very often we're going into like derelict buildings or things like that. We do rely on health and safety people in the production to help us with saying, okay, this is safe, that's not safe. But ultimately, you got to look after yourself on a set. And that's what I wanted to close with. We can listen to safety protocols and we can listen to other people a lot. And that comes back to the question previously, what to do if you start getting complacent and tired. But ultimately, you've got to use your own common sense and listen to your own gut. You know, if you walk into a situation and you think something feels wrong here or something feels unsafe, listen to that intuition and follow it, because you could easily save your life or someone else's ultimately.
Hey,
And
can I
that's my
just
bit.
mention real quick footwear? Because you showed
Oh,
that
yeah.
factory and I thought, my God, that's a rusty nail disaster waiting to happen.
Absolutely. In terms of footwear, thank you for bringing that up, Bill. For years, I needed orthotic insoles and I didn't know. You know, my partner at the time, she was like, "Oh, you got these weird brown marks on your big toe. What's that from?" She's like, "You should see a podiatrist." And I did. And I had my feet scanned at the podiatrist and I got orthotic insoles made, and it changed my life. Changed my life at work in terms of like back pain, you know, working with like hips, shoulders, all the rest. It absolutely changed everything. So if you're spending a lot of time on your feet, Bill, thank you so much. Even if you don't think you have a problem, I would recommend as soon as you can, go see a podiatrist and have a look, because very often a lot of problems that I was experienced previously, like problems in my hips, my back, my shoulders, all the rest, were actually related to my feet.
She saw marks on your feet or on your shoes?
On my toes. Because of the way that my foot was, you know, it was like I had a serious pronation, I think. And because of the way my toe was rubbing inside the shoe, it was actually bruising my toe. I didn't realize it, you know. She was like, "Oh, you've got..."
Guy has his hand up. Guy?
Yeah, I just wanted to share back when we were talking about the checklists and how important they are, and you're talking about people going fast. And I find that story, you know, just bringing up a story of this is what happened. So, you know, just let's take a break. Let me tell you a story. And for the young guys, they haven't heard some of these stories like the Rock one. So I want to share one with you that I've shared with some of the folks in our company. So this is my uncle, Rick Cochran. He was a pilot. And if you look at the NTSB aircraft accident report, the probable cause and the synopsis on page 1 was just chilling when I read this, that it says the safety board determines that the probable cause of this accident was the failure of the crew to perform a pre-takeoff control check, resulting in takeoff with the elevators immobilized by a control batten. So, I mean, just a simple thing, plane went up, came back down. Just very unfortunate to read, you know, the why all these years later, that a simple checklist. And so to this day, I have checklists with our employees like, hey, are you going in order? Are you out of order? And we maintain safety all over the place because, yeah, going too fast. We have like big lifts that carry pallets and it's dangerous. Like you can get crushed by these things. Or
How many employees do you have now?
there's 16.
Wow.
Yeah. But you got to take care of your people, man. You got to, and so it's huge.
I remember Guy back when you started, just you.
Scott, you're totally breaking up. I'm going to move on. Paul and then Mike.
I just wanted to talk about the rental overbuying, because I've just bought the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 6K. Thanks to Alex, and but I can imagine, and I've got a relationship with a rental company here in Zurich, which is very good. They're called Visuals. We used them when we were doing Pixel Core stuff, and it's nice. I can walk in there and they know me by name, and if I have a question or a problem, they're the guys I can go to. And if I go to a shoot where I need more than one Blackmagic, then I will go and rent the others from them. So it makes sense, and all the audio gear, etc. as well.
Yeah, it's great. Maintaining relationships really helps a lot with those particular people.
We have one last question, Chris, from Victor, our own Victor. And he says, and he's gone. I hope he can watch this. Can you talk about tripod safety?
Yeah, sure. Tripod safety, very often we'll have hard spreaders at the bottom of tripods. If we go onto uneven ground, you obviously can't have the hard spreaders. So we'll remove them and you'll put on like rope spreaders or soft spreaders. If If you want to make the camera higher, generally use 2 people. Don't try and do it by yourself in case you put your back out. That's a thing. And when moving the camera around, definitely take the camera off, especially if it's a bigger camera. I was guilty of this a lot in early on in my career, where you'd have a film camera with a huge lens and a 1,000-foot mag on the O'Connor head, on the head and legs, and I would put everything all together in one on my shoulder and march it up. It's stupid. You don't need to be a hero. Just take the camera off. There's enough people around to help you, and the schedule will still be fine, I'm sure.
That's when you say, you want to. I appreciate your attitude, but you want to be doing this when you're my age.
Yeah.
All right,
With
that's
that,
the last question. Any last? Stuart has his hand up.
Yeah, so it seems to be that it always comes back to the people and looking after the people and making sure the people have got the right information. And one small comment, a thank you to Chris Clark. The writer in me now realizes I need to go back and write checklists into different scenes for safety items on sci-fi ships.
Very good. Anything else? I have a schedule. No hands up. Oh, I'm sorry. Mike Burns. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, so just dawned on me years ago as a field producer in LA, we used to always emphasize the quote unquote schmuck check when we left a location, but there never seemed to be so much emphasis on when we were packing, preparing for the location. Do we have everything? The emphasis was always like, Jesus, we can't leave anything behind, the quote unquote schmuck check. So it just dawned on me that there was always a bigger emphasis on we can't leave anything behind, as opposed to we can't forget anything. Anyway, just thought about that.
We used to call it the idiot check, and literally, the truck is packed, the doors are shut. So you send a couple people in and say, just go look at every place we ever put anything down, every place we ever plugged anything in. It's so bad to get, it's like, where is that mic?
So because I'm from New York City, it was a schmuck check.
Gotcha.
Brilliant. All right, I have to leave. Thank you very much, everyone.
Chris. It's 2 minutes to. Thank you very much. So Mickey, go ahead and hit it. I'm going to try and actually hit the schedule here. Today's Wednesday, tomorrow, Thursday. We're going to, let me see, what is it? Second guest is Daria Musk. So I don't know anything about Daria. I'm interested in hearing about her. Friday, our second hour is our education, also on Saturday education, and then a nice easy day on Sunday. So we'll let the music sting out, and then we'll all say goodbye. And we got 2 more last questions.
Thank you, Chris Summers. Thank you.
Good night, y'all.